Hello. I am sorry, I'm having a few technical difficulties here, but I think we're okay now. Hi, I'm Kristin Zusak, and I am a hand-in-hand instructor. I'm a therapist in Denver, Colorado. I have two teenage children, who I've used hand-in-hand with for many, many years, and I'm really happy to be here today. Please, I'm just going to ask you to welcome. Let me know where you are from, and say hello. So let me know where you're from and say hello. I'd love to know who's here, because I love this topic and I love what we're talking about today. Please let me know if you can hear me. So if somebody can send me a little yes that you can hear me, that will help me to know that this is working, so you're not just trying to read my lips. And so we're talking today about from controlling type of parenting to a connecting type of parenting. And this is a huge paradigm shift, but I'm really excited about this topic. So the first question I would really like to ask you is, what if you are to look ahead to when your children will be 30 years old, for example, who do you want them to be? Like, what attributes do you want them to have? So feel free to write some answers in here. I will also give you, my thoughts on that. Like, when my kids are 30, I want them to be kind. I want them to be generous. I want them to be hardworking. I want them to have healthy relationships. I thank you, Alice, for letting me know you can hear. And again, let me know what you would like your kids to be like when they're 30. So, compassionate, committed to their families. I want them to have joy, right? I want my kids to be able to be playful, to laugh easily, to handle stress, know how to handle stress in their lives. It just seems like our lives keep getting more and more. Hi, Pippa. Thanks for joining. Our lives can be so stressful. So how do they handle that? So yeah, anything else that you can think of that you would like for your children when they become adults? What do you want their lives to be like? Keep adding any of that. So a very kind human being. Thank you, Aski. Akshi, sorry about that. Appreciate your input on that. And yeah, being kind is something important to many of us. So here I want to determined. Alice, thank you for sharing that. Determination is an important one. Like, there's so many things that are going to knock us down over and over again. And to have determination to I think that's tied in with resilience, to be able to get back up and do more and be who you are and be true to yourself, right? So those are great ideas. Thank you. And so I want to look at, can the perspective of controlling our children and controlling their behavior, can that get us there? Or does connecting with our children help get our children to these attributes that we want? So, and Pippa says to kids to be empathetic, successful in their choices. I love that one. Flexible in a crisis of stress, trustworthy, and good fun to be around. Those are great. Those are great attributes to have. So thank you for sharing that. So yes, we've got controlling and we've got connecting. And there, try to see where my two hands are, and how to get there. So really, the things that we want, so what I'm going to be talking a lot about today is the things that we want for our kids. We can get there by connecting with them. There are certain aspects, however, in the realm of control, and I'm going to start defining what control means and what it is, that are actually kind of helpful and that we also want to implement. So it's not necessarily black or white with many things in life, right? And so, but what we do know too is that developing these attributes can be undermined with excessive control. And so that's something very important here to talk about. So some control is really absolutely necessary. And so for us as adults too, like we need to be, have somewhat of control over our lives. Like we can't control everything, but we need to have a plan. We need to have purpose. We need to know where we're going in life. We need to know what we're doing every day. Same thing with our families. Like, what values do we want to implement in our family? What values do we want to focus on in our family and share? And how do we want to be in the world as a family? Like, that's an aspect of control, is thinking about how we want to do things. And that's very important, and that's an important thing to have here too. It's also important to have developmentally appropriate expectations for our kids that are given with warmth too. So kids don't always understand the expectations. They can be different in one setting than they are in another. Like school is different than home, which is different than the mall, which is different than the grocery store, and so which is different than the park. And so learning what these expectations are is part of a developmental process that children have. But for us as the parent, thinking about what's appropriate. So am I going to expect my 3-year-old to sit for 2 hours in a concert that's full of string instruments and a symphony orchestra? Will be really hard. That is not a developmentally appropriate expectation. Or am I going to expect my child to not play in the mud after it rained when I told them to go outside, and I get mad at them for being dirty when they came back in? That's really not a developmentally appropriate expectation. So expectations are good. They become controlling when they're not, in terms of how we enforce them, which we'll talk about in a moment, and if they're not developmentally appropriate. And so control really becomes a problem when we have this long set of rules that we continually enforce, and we are expecting obedience without any question. They don't have to understand the rule, they just need to do it. And we also have these high standards of behavior that are not really appropriate for the child. We keep our, control is also excessive when we keep our kids on a short leash, and we also demand obedience from them. And misbehavior is not tolerated, and often the only choice in this scenario is to use harshness and punishment in order to enforce what we consider good behaviors or appropriate behaviors. So we're constantly harping on our kids about the rules, and we are expecting complete compliance with the rules. These are the times when control gets to be a problem. And really, control is really like a belief system that we have as an adult, where we expect, like, our judgment reigns. Our judgment is what has to control the world and is what's appropriate here. And we use our power over our children to enforce our judgment. So no, you can't do this. No, you can't play with your toys right now because it's time to eat dinner. Well, that might be appropriate, but how you set that limit is the difference between control and using connection. And we'll actually get into limit setting here in a moment. But and this is a problem in terms of this, our judgment has to reign, because we need to give our kids the opportunity to practice their judgment. Like, judgment is a function of brain development that happens in the prefrontal cortex. It's a higher level of thinking. And we need to give kids the opportunity to develop judgment. And if we're always enforcing our judgment over our children, that makes it hard to do. It's hard for them to develop that themselves then. And so we need to give them that practice. And also, when we're focused on our judgment over theirs, we're making this assumption that they're not good enough or they're not smart enough. Children sense that. They can tell that we're doing that. And a lot of this is habit, I think, more than anything. We'll talk about where it comes from, but I think it's important to recognize that we're all trying our best as parents. And I think it's important for us to look at what our habits are, right? And, do any of you out there have some habits of control? Let me know. Put a thumbs up there or a yes. Like, I know I do. I'm still working on where I'm using control with my kids. Too much, where I go over the line, for example. So because it's not, when we're really controlling, we're not letting our children's goodness show up, right? We're not letting, we're not assuming, it's like we're assuming their good judgment doesn't exist, or that they're not good people. And so that we're sort of like, they're going to make bad decisions. And we need to actually let our kids make mistakes and support them through that. So aspects of control that we do want to support in families is to have expectations. It's good to have expectations for our children. It's good to have a plan for the family. And think about, I'd love you to take a moment to think about a good leader or a good mentor that you had in your life and how they supported you. Typically, that mentor, that leader, that person who inspired you had expectations of you, but they didn't control you, right? They didn't say, you have to behave this way. They might have helped you with a plan, but they didn't say it has to look like this. Like, that's for you to figure out. And that's the role we take as parents as well. And so I'm really kind of shifting it here into this idea around leadership rather than control. Because leadership is very different from control. Leadership has more to do with people wanting to follow you, right? Like, control is demanding, requiring your children to follow you, your family to follow you. And in actual truth, when we focus on leadership, we focus on connecting, children naturally follow us. It's actually a survival instinct to follow us. It's a survival instinct to actually cooperate with us, because children are dependent on us, and we're like the center of their universe. And so it's in their best interest. It's in their best interest of survival, of doing well in this world, to follow us. And so when we give them the connection they need, they can do that. And they do it naturally, and they do it beautifully. So this is where we're trying to go with this, more as a leadership idea. And they also can tell, like, children can tell when we're like worthy of being followed, when we're providing connection, when we're providing safety for them, like emotional safety for them. And so this idea around family leadership really involves more about building trust in the relationship, putting the relationship at a really high standard, like it's important, and any breaks in the relationship are repaired. And the relationship actually comes before behavior. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a moment too. Safety, emotional safety is provided. The leader has clarity. The leader has good insight. The leader is able to tune into other people. The leader is able to tune into our children and understand our children's needs, and they can read their signals. And this is so important, not only because it feels good to be tuned into, it feels good to, that we think that people understand us, but for children specifically who are dependent on a caring adult to help get them through the world, to help them with their brain development, for example. It's also a survival mechanism in terms of they're reaching out in a nonverbal way, like their brain, it's their limbic brain, which we'll talk more about in a moment, but their limbic brain is reaching out to the people around them, asking the question, can you tune into me so that I know I'm going to be okay? So it's not just this feel-good thing. It's actually something that we need for survival and to thrive in this world. And they need to know that we are available to connect with them. So also in terms of leadership, levity and laughter are key features of leadership too, like not taking ourselves too seriously. Having fun, like not letting the stresses of life weigh us down or carried on our back all the time. And setting limits. Like setting limits is an absolute important piece. of, of, of connection as well. That doesn't, it's different from control, but it is definitely a piece of relationship, of connection, and supporting a child's natural process. I also just want to say, like, the family unit, because what I see, like, people who focus on control, what I oftentimes see is, like, they have this particular mentality that comes from, like, business or the military or just another sort of hierarchical structure that requires things to get done and, fast things to happen. And the thing I want to really say is that a family is very different from a business. A family is very different from the military. In a business, you're focusing on profit, and there's all kinds of administrative stuff and sales and costs and expenses. In a family, certainly you have to have a financial piece, but when you're looking at your children, you're also looking at, how do I help create neural development? How do I help my child have good, positive relationships? How do I help my child use play to work through challenges? How do I help my child be a good learner, to take in information and remember things well? So they're very different paradigms to work in. And so if you're a controlling parent, it's something to think about, is what paradigm are you working in? And what are the aspects of family that actually can help us utilize some of the attributes that help that family become successful. So what does connection mean then? So we need to go through that as well. So connection is really related to many things and how we think of connection. Connection regarding hand in hand. So connection has a lot to do with how we have a part of the brain, it's called the limbic brain, the mammalian brain, the middle brain, that reaches out and connects with others. And our children, their brains are developing, up until the mid to late 20s. And it develops in relationship with caring adults. So children need limbic connection. They need the adult reaching out for connection with warmth, with positive body language, with a sense of treasuring the child, with a warm smile, with soft eyes, and with openness and with warmth that helps the child know that, oh, this person has my back. I can count on them. This is what helps them feel safe, giving that safety. And I'm not always talking about, so safety has the broad sense, not just physical safety, but emotional safety as well. Feeling safe in the world, secure in the world, because when that happens, the brain lights up. The brain says, I'm going to optimize. I'm going to develop. I'm going to learn at my best. I'm going to be able to plan. I'm going to be able to control my impulses at my age. So a 3-year-old doesn't have great impulse control. But I'm going to do my best at controlling my impulses. I'm going to develop my judgment. So a child is learning these things when they're in connection with us. So this is a key piece of having connection with us. So this is, again, where they can be anchored by an adult, and they can feel safe, and they can think. So oftentimes I like to just talk about thinking in general. If the child is thinking well, and so they can plan, they can remember experiences, they can learn, they can work well with others, they can be flexible, they can be enthusiastic, and have some control over their impulses. So connection, this kind of connection, is easy when times are good. When we're out on a picnic, we're outside playing in the playground, or we're on the living room floor hanging out, being silly and goofy, or after the bath and we're, kids are all wet and they're running around being silly. But things fall apart, and it's a normal thing in life. Why don't you give me a thumbs up if things have ever fallen apart in your house? Because yes, they do happen. And this is when we really start to think about control, right? Like, we don't oftentimes think about what we're doing, we're just doing them. And this is when we either automatically go in control, I would actually say. And it's good to notice this about yourself, that this is what you're doing. And our need to go into control is, well, a couple things. One, I would say there's a cultural aspect of it. Yes, thank you, Alice, for being honest with me. There's a cultural aspect of that, because in general, in Western societies, there's an aspect of control. We like to control things. It's just who we are. It's how we've developed as a culture. And it's important to notice that. But then there's also the internal aspects of why we focus on control. And I want to kind of go through some of these. So one thing is that we can have an anxiety around showing others or believing ourselves that our children are good, that our children can behave well, that they can do well in society. As a parent, we're constantly feeling like we're being judged, and that we're, have a magnifying glass on us at all times. And so it makes us nervous. It makes us anxious. And so we can shift into control because, oh my God, my kid's at the playground and he's taking his clothes off. And you got to control that situation, is our thought. Typically, there are, one thing I'm here to tell you is that there are alternatives to shifting into control. Another reason why we focus on control as a parent or go into control is that a lot of it has to do with our history too. So maybe as a child, we didn't feel safe. We didn't feel emotionally safe. Maybe we didn't feel physically safe. And we had to manage things. We had to manage ourselves on our own. And so we created this default pattern of, okay, control is it. Like, I gotta control everything in my little box, my little world here, to make it through, to survive. It's really a survival skill. It made sense at the time. It just doesn't work so well as an adult when we're raising kids. And so noticing these things is important. And then our own childhood experiences too, experiences of if we were excessively controlled by our own parents or other people around us can be one thing, or if we had no control in our lives too. So if we are an adult child of an alcoholic or someone who's abusive and we had to walk on eggshells all the time, this can create for us this need for control. So like if our kids, so a lot of that is chaotic, right? If we had a chaotic childhood, and when our children are displaying chaos, which is kind of a typical thing for kids, they're playing and they're loud and they make a lot of noise and they jump up and down and they move a lot. They're very chaotic. And so if you can feel the chaos in your body, and it can be very uncomfortable. And so we have this reaction to like, I got to control all this. I got to stop all this. Put your toys away. Go outside. Like, these are aspects of us shifting into control. Or again, if we were controlled in our lives, it's kind of the default pattern. It's like it left an imprint on us. And so it's how we just relate to the world, because that's how our neurobiology really develops. And then also another area of what can shift us into control is just our discomfort of having feelings, or our discomfort of others having feelings. So if our child's having a tantrum, we could be like, oh God, I can't handle this. Just go to your room, get out of my way. You figure it out, not out here in front of me. Like, all this discomfort can bring up anxiety, can bring up emotional pain and challenges for us. And so we just want it away from us. And also, the last but not least thing I was thinking about is how we can be under-resourced, right? So if we are stressed, if we are tired, if we haven't been eating well, if things are just challenging for us, if we have some major life challenges happening, if we have to go to the doctor in 30 minutes and our kids aren't dressed and no one has eaten, that's a significant amount of stress. We are under-resourced. that can help, that can make us just shift into, okay, I'm going to control everything rather than looking at connection. And so the good news is that with all these things I've been talking about in terms of what shifts us into control, Hand in Hand has ways to support us called listening partnership for parents. And by working on the listening partnership, you can actually work on these things. You can change how much you shift into control. You can change how you view the world. You can change how you look at stress. So it's an amazing tool that we have for ourselves to support ourselves. So I would love to know, thumbs up if that sounds interesting to anybody, to be able to change some of that stuff. So hi, Tori, welcome. Yeah, lots of things for making this so I can understand why I'm not, yes, thank you, why I'm not at my normal right now. Yeah, normal can be a hard thing. And there is nothing wrong with you, Tori, nothing at all. There's just hard things that have happened and you're getting triggered a lot. And getting support for yourself is an amazing gift you can give to yourself. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about Hand in Hand. So let's go back and feel free, if you want to post a question, we don't have to wait till the end on questions. You can post a question now if you want. So I just want to talk again about how we want to control our children and if you just, sorry, I'm going to back up again. If you just joined us, I am talking about moving from control to connection parenting and really like the why we would do that. So we want to control our children. Well, and I talked too about the bigger picture we want for our kids when they're older, but we're also living in the here and now, right? We are in the battlefield. We are managing lots of chaos and lots of energy and lots of big feelings and lots of needs all at once, right? And so we want to shift into control when our children don't comply with us, when they're defiant, when they're disrespectful, when they're out of control, because it does feel like that, right? When they hurt someone else. And what happens to us is they tend to, when that happens, we tend to think that children are being manipulative. We tend to think they're out to get us, that they're making our life hard. They're trying to be mean or conniving. They've planned this whole thing. And what neuroscience teaches us is that when children tantrum or they're defiant or they're, out of control or disrespectful or they're hurting someone, they're off track in some way, they're aggressive, that what has happened is that connection has broken. And their connection. So we talked about limbic connection earlier and their need to know that someone's looking out for them, someone's on their side, someone warm and safe because they're dependent on us is there watching over them. And so when connection breaks, a feeling comes in. So that feeling varies: disappointment, frustration, anger, sadness, despair. Sometimes the feeling comes first and that breaks connection. And sometimes it's the other way around where connection breaks and then the feeling comes in. And what happens then is that the limbic brain floods. So that limbic brain is one of the functions, it's assessing safety. So that's related to looking out for people who are going to support them, who are going to be on their side, who are making sure that they're safe. And so it's assessing the environment. And when the limbic brain gets these broken connection, gets a signal that gets flooded with feelings, it sends out a signal to the prefrontal cortex to stop thinking. No thinking, or limit the thinking if we're not talking about dramatic situation. So, stop the thinking. And when that's happening, if you think about our need to control, we've got this child with broken connection, big feelings, can't think. And if we go into control, our child actually can't understand language at that point. They can't learn. They can't get the lesson we're trying to teach them. And they can't learn from us us trying to control things. So we're actually like, and in many ways, we're missing a huge opportunity as well to help a child have a gain in emotional intelligence. So in that moment when connection is broken, big feelings are there, the limbic brain is flooded, the child can't think, we really can't expect a child to behave well. We can't expect good behavior for them. So, I'm just going to throw out an example of a child with a sippy cup who's kicking the sippy cup around the room, but it's full of grape juice or cranberry juice or something that's horrifically there in the cup. The child's disconnected, flooded with feelings. The alternative, so I also don't want to leave you with take away control, but don't put anything there. So the thing you want to put in place, and there's actually many things to put in place in terms of connection, but one thing that I think can relate well to people who rely a lot on control is setting limits that I mentioned before. And so setting limits is really much more, the key points here are you set a warm limit. So we're recognizing the child's not bad. We're just recognizing the child's out of balance. Their brain isn't working well. They're not able to think, and their limbic brain is flooded. So I oftentimes have a visual in my head of my child's brain is going, wah! And that kind of helps me know that, ooh, they are not going to do well right now. So if a child's kicking their sippy cup around and a juice is pouring out, control might look at yelling the child, pushing the child, grabbing things away, right? A warm limit really looks more like, sippy cup needs to be safe, and we physically set the limit. So we would actually put our hands on the sippy cup or take our child, depending on how wild the child might be. But we're not the key point is not letting the child kick the sippy cup. So I might put my hand on the child's leg actually and say, we can't kick the sippy cup. And we don't let the child do that off-track behavior that they're out of balance, wacky brain is causing them to do. And what that does, when we bring warmth with it, we physically set the limit, is it allows the child to offload and have some big feelings around being out of balance and whatever's causing them to do the behavior of kicking their sippy cup around. And it allows them to offload that. So the tension, because we have this natural process to regain equilibrium again. And what that natural process is about, it's crying, it's shaking, it's having a tantrum, it's sweating, it's big movements actually. Those are the things that our natural body and brain do to regain balance when after the limbic brain is going like that. And so when you can set that limit with warmth, and the warmth piece is important because that's what speaks to the limbic brain, the child can offload their tension and they can regain balance. And then they can help you clean up the room or whatever that looks like, right? You can do stuff afterwards, but supporting the natural process that children have without breaking the relationship, you actually create more trust in the relationship because you were actually on the child's side the whole time. You weren't yelling or demeaning the child or telling the child they're bad. You're actually supporting the goodness of the child. You're actually supporting their development. And so you're keeping that, as I said before, that children's brains develop in relationship with caring adults. You're helping their brain development because you're giving connection and warmth in a hard moment, right? And so this is one huge reason why connection works and, this over control doesn't. So, if we move into control, there's lots of things that can happen. We're missing an opportunity to develop emotional intelligence, or we're breaking trust in the relationship. The child might feel isolated, or it might trigger defenses. It might also cause the child to focus on themselves, because if they get defensive, if we start yelling at the child, they're going to just get mad that we yelled, and they're focusing on what a bad parent we are and just self-preservation. And that's not good for development, is it? That I think is pretty clear for most adults to kind of get that. So And also, I would just like to add that when we focus on control and we have these big reactions, it can create fear experiences for children because they're so much smaller than we are. We can be big and mean and scary and hard on kids. It can really create a fear experience for them when they're in confusion around they're supposed to be trusting us, but yet they're afraid of us, right? So, and when we connect, when we focus on connection, the opposite happens. So so when we focus on connection, like setting limits, and there's lots of things you can do, they can grow in their trust in us. They can develop a greater sense of self. Like, they don't have to go through this breaking down of self, and then we have to build them back up. We didn't break anything in them by setting a limit like this. We help them gain emotional intelligence as well. And I also just want to say, and I think it's clear, but I want to be really explicit about it, is that this is not a permissive style of parenting either. So, and again, like the setting limits is a big, big piece of hand in hand. And so we're not saying free reign, like we either control you or we let you just run free. It's not that simple. And as I said in the beginning, there's actually aspects of control that I like. But it's when we get excessive and when we're forcing obedience that things get more challenging. And so what this also does, it allows the relationship to be at the center of the family too, rather than forcing behaviors that hurt relationships. So I want to just also talk about kind of in general some other things I've noticed about control in terms of working with clients. Like over time, when we focus on control, I've definitely seen how it can deteriorate the relationship. If we have control as like our main parenting discipline, it creates over time organic disconnection in the relationship, and it creates also a pattern of not being able to tune in to our child, because if the child's doing something and the parent's thinking, oh my God, pain in the butt, I can't believe my child's doing this. I'm so embarrassed. What in the world is happening now? They're so bad. And the child has no idea that the parent's thinking this, but they know that the parent has disconnected from them. And so it actually, though, limits our ability as the parent to look underneath that behavior, to not, it stops us from becoming curious about what's underneath that behavior. Did connection break? How did it break? What's happening? What big feeling is my child having? So the behavior is a signal to us that the child has broken connection. The behavior is a signal to us that big feelings are there. And we may not see that if we're so focused on all the bad things our child is doing. And the beautiful thing is that Hand in Hand has all these tools that helps us to learn how to do that well, and ways of supporting ourselves too, because, and this isn't like, okay, next week I'm done with control. If we've been imprinted on, control is the way that I was brought up as a child, and it's my default for a variety of reasons, it's something we work on for a long, long time. But you can actually make some significant shifts along the way so that your relationship thrives. So I also want to say too that when a child is controlled, has a relationship with you that's controlling, they really don't learn to rely on their inner compass, right? Or on their own inner judgment, because the adult has put their judgment, the adult has put their compass on top of the child. So they haven't learned the neural pathways to do that themselves. And that's really, when we think about what we want for our children as they get older, these are things that we want for them, right? So successful in their choices, flexible in crisis of stress, are examples of that. And also I want to put in there too that when we get disconnected, we can't think. So why don't you, raise your hand or give me a thumbs up if you ever feel disconnected. I would love to see that here, like people being honest about that. And truthfully, me as a parent, I feel disconnected at some point, most days, I would even say. And so it's something we need to be realistic about. And what happens when we feel disconnected. So I'm even talking about, so feelings of disconnected include things like feeling alone, feeling like I'm carrying the world on my shoulders, feeling just really isolated, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed. How am I going to do all this? Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Those are examples of disconnection. And so these things happen. And when we feel disconnected, we're not showing or having our best thinking either. And so having a system in place to help us when we're disconnected is vital, is really important to being a good thinker and showing family leadership as well, as I talked about in the beginning. And so dealing with all those stressors and the imbalances that we have in our lives is important, but also just knowing that we're not going to do it perfectly. There's going to be times when we shift into control, and you know what? That's okay. You're still a good parent. You're working at it. That's the important piece. It's just you're working at it. And good for you for doing that. Like, that's a huge step in and of itself. Another piece of this is that a regular diet of connection when children are young can really be miraculous when they become teenagers and they're starting to turn to their peer groups for support and advice and their judgment, right? So connection provides this amazing foundation of trust, right? When they've had years and years of building trust, knowing. And when we do that, it actually affects a child's neurobiology. It affects their brain development. It affects their neurobiology. They feel it in their body. And when they feel it in their body, that connection is not so easily broken. And it'll probably happen as a teen just because it's normal and natural. But you can bring it back easier. And that's what I'm seeing with parents who have had children that are growing up with a diet of connection. And it just sort of like provides this well in which the child can pull from when they're feeling isolated, when they're feeling challenged. They've got this well of connection, this well of trust to pull from, which is amazing. And if we really tap into ourselves in terms of, just thinking about what did we want as children? What did we want our childhood to look like? I think we can realize that connection is instinctual, right? Like that, and we actually know that because we know kids are hardwired to connect. Their brains develop in relationship with caring adults, but their brain has a drive to connect, right? And so when we think about that, we know that that's what we wanted as children too. And it feels good to us to have connection. It supports our own personal growth. And we don't actually enjoy enforcing obedience. We don't enjoy nagging. We don't enjoy overreacting to our children. We don't enjoy controlling them. It eats away at us. We don't feel like a good parent. And so it isn't really how relationships are supposed to be. It isn't when we visualize our relationship with our child, when our child was first born or when we were first pregnant. We never said to ourselves, I can't wait to control this little kid. That's not what we envision for ourselves. So we can actually build that relationship and have a lifetime of building that relationship and create more confidence in our parenting through that connection and enjoy it a whole lot more. And children who grow up connected are confident. They have a good sense of self. They relate well to others. And they can stand up for themselves too. Like, that's an important piece for me. I want my kids to be able to stand up for themselves. I didn't do that as a child. I want my kids to do that in a healthy way. And connection is helping them to do that, which is amazing. So if you, I'm going to also, I love that there's been a number of parents here. If you're interested in next steps, and then I'm going to do any questions you might have, but if you're interested in next steps, the Parent Club is an amazing program for people, and I'm going to put in a link here to get to the Parent Club, or to sign up for the Parent Club if I can get it to work. But I'm going to try that again. So the Parent Club is a monthly membership that you can have. There you go. And it's a monthly membership. Oh, I haven't been scrolling down, so I'm sorry if you've been writing stuff. Okay, so there we go. It's a monthly membership program that Hand in Hand has, where you can get support from an amazing, vibrant community, where you can get coaching on demand. For the most part, you usually get an answer within a few hours to a parenting question you might have. There's weekly question and answer calls with an instructor. I do some of those. You have monthly access to the founder, Patty Whitler. There's a monthly listening time call. So there's a huge list of benefits. If you click on that link, you can get access to these amazing benefits. So if you have any questions, I will stay on here for a little bit and answer any questions you might have about, if you have challenges with control, and there's nothing wrong with you if you do either. Just let me know if there's anything that you would like to talk about. And you can always find me through Hand in Hand as well, or you can put your questions on the Facebook page too. So thank you so much for joining me today. Again, my name is Kristin Zusak, and I am an active member in the Hand in Hand community, and I'm a therapist in Denver, Colorado, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.